Josiah's clumsy behind. Excuse me, you guys, for the blackout, but my son, it caused the blackout. So the chat. Uh, I'm not sure if the notifications went out, but this will be posted most likely. Also, as I stated, the internet is acting up here. Hold on one moment, guys. All right. If you guys can hear me and see me well, put a number 9 in the chat. This is I need to go ahead and get started. I'm not sure, like I said, if notifications are going out. So this is really for the sisters, as it relates to or it concerns our relationship with our mother. Okay. And so oftentimes, I know I've experienced it in my family, I've seen it in the family, with my girlfriends, where there's just this tumultuous relationship, or there's a great deal of dysfunction, um, um, or where they may not be speaking to, their mother, or they may have distanced themselves from their mother, because they just don't get along. And so, we tend to kind of dehumanize our mothers, or they're our superheroes, so they're made out to be superheroes, which kind of puts them in a category of, not being human, and not, having feelings. Okay. And so, um, it's kind of like we make them out to be infallible. Okay. And like they can't make mistakes. And so I think it's very important for us to, of course, honor our mothers, but kind of take them down a bit from off that very high, pedestal, and see them as a woman just like you. And so my relationship, and my life changed, the day that I realized my mother was a woman. Okay. The day I realized my mother was a woman. Growing up, my mother was my hero. If anyone tried to harm me or do anything to me, my mother was there. And I remember just several times, just telling her that a teacher, did something wrong to me. And my mother was up there, guns blazing, okay, just about ready to tear some stuff up, And so, as I grew up, and as I, became a teenager, um, just seeing my mother just, in an abusive relationship, just saw her struggle, really to, make sure that we had all the things that we wanted, and needed. And she did a phenomenal job. We, always had the best of the best, the clothes, the shoes, the everything, we always had that. But there were other things, and as it relates to our relationship, and that really started to create a barrier. And I saw it, in my girlfriends, as well, in the relationships with their moms, as well. And one girlfriend in particular, a teenager, but she just could not find a balance, you know, in the relationship between her mother and herself. And so it caused her to have to move out of the house at a very young age. And she kind of, she distanced herself from her mother, and they really did not speak for years. I mean, there are a lot of underlying factors. She felt that her mother was abusive, verbally abusive. Her mother would call her out of her name, call her all kinds of B's and, hoes and all kinds of things. There seemed to be a lot of, jealousy, you know, she would say, things like, "Oh, you think you so pretty," and stuff like that. You're not all that pretty, and I mean, really, I mean, you really have the dynamic of envy, as a major underlying factor, you know, as it relates to the dysfunctional relationship between mother and daughter. And so with the abuse, verbal abuse, the emotional abuse, mental abuse, and physical abuse. I've seen all of that in the various mother-daughter relationships, as it relates to my friends. And again, I've seen it in my own family. And so, like I said, the day that I realized that my mother was a woman, things really changed for me. And what I sought to do was to understand what type of background and environment my mother came from. And I made a conscious decision to do that. And my mother really didn't talk much, about her upbringing, a relationship that she had with her mother. But I started to ask around, and started to ask family members, uncles and cousins and aunts and things of that nature. And my mother kind of gave me a bit of a glimpse. She told me, that they had to go into foster care, and so she had to take on the responsibility of both mother and sister, with her brothers. My mother has 6 brothers. I mean, she's the oldest. Okay, so there was a great deal of responsibility. My mother said she moved out, and I think she was like 15, 16. She had her own place. She was a teenage mother herself, and also trying to mother these brothers of hers. But she did say, for a short while, my grandmother, while my grandmother was getting herself together, that they had to brief in foster care. And so I wanted to put myself in my shoes and to see how I would feel, if my mother put my sisters and I, in foster care, to be separated from my mother at such a young age, from her nurture, from her care, from her protection, and you just have on me. And I immediately just, begin to cry. I'm just at the thought of being, separated from mother at a very young age, and then having to go into foster care. And just feeling the weight and the stress that was on my mother, having to mother her brothers, and my mother would say she would buy them school clothes and really like take care of them. And what a weight to have on your shoulders, and then be pregnant yourself, as a teenage girl. And so, you have the weight of an adult maturation process yourself, and still trying to figure it out. And so, just being able to understand, the shoes that she had to fill. Just understanding, all of those experiences that she had at such a young age and how it impacted her. I need to understand why my mom would react in a certain way in particular situations. And so, I realized not just my mom, but my girlfriend's mother, they also had a story, and they also had, experiences that shaped them, shaped the way that they think, and in turn that shaped their behavior. And so, just hearing about her upbringing, and knowing that there was a lot of violence, in the home. My grandmother was known as the female Joe Louis. Like, everybody tells me, "Oh, your grandmother could wreck. Like, she could fight. She like straight up fight. There's no cat fighting," and like her pulling, like she had those hands. And so, that's what I hear. Short time with my grandmother because she passed away. As I hear her, you're just like her. You're so reserved. You're to yourself. But my grandmother grew up having to fight like a lot of men, like her husbands, exposed to that violence at such a young age. Of course, that had an impact, on my mother. It made her very much so rough around the edges, but it also made her susceptible to repeat that, um, to mimic that, in her relationships, and unfortunately, she did in one in particular. And so the day that I realized, just learning all of that, just learning my mother's story and learning her history, that's when I realized that my mother was a woman, and she had gone through and was going through, things in her life, that she's not infallible, and that she's not perfect, and that she has been through some things that have attributed to, her mentality. And so once I made a commitment to understand, overstand, and understand my mother's history, my mother's background, my mother's upbringing, it helped me to fully understand, understand, and overstand my mother. Okay. And so I always grant my mother a grace, because I know from when she came, I know her history, and I know the things that she had to witness and the things that she had to take on. And so essentially, when you are so young and having to act as if you are an adult and take on adult responsibilities, it makes you grow up faster than you should. Okay. And so essentially, when my mother was put in the place of really being a mother to her brothers and then just being a teenage mother, it dawned on me that, her maturation process was intercepted. And so in a lot of ways, maybe my mom is still stuck at that age, of when she got pregnant, or when she had to take on being a mother to her brothers. And so she really didn't get to go through that, full maturation process. So she was kind of stopped at that age. And so, and just seeing a lot of the same dynamics, like I said, as it relates to my girlfriends, and them going through the same things, especially that one girlfriend who had to move out at such a young age because, her mother was abusive. And so, verbally, mentally, emotionally, and physically, would put her out on a whim, tell her to get out, it's just horrible, just horrible, a horrible dynamic, between mother and daughter. And it put a lot of stress on my girlfriend. Oftentimes she would come into school and she couldn't concentrate and just break down, in tears because, the night before, maybe the morning. And so, just me, hindsight 2020, just thinking about how I sought to understand my mother and where she came from, it made me think about also what their mothers went through. Because if you're treating your daughter in such a horrendous way, I could only imagine how your mother treated you or what you went through. It's quite obvious that there is a lot of trauma, there, and that there is a history of abuse because you are repeating what was done to you. And so, yeah, the day that I realized that my mother was a woman, it just allowed me to see her in a broader way. It helped me to develop, healthier ways of, interacting. She would get into her moods, you know. But I mean, she was a wonderful mother, and so this is just for sharing and educational purposes, and just me encouraging you all to really what she went through and her upbringing, and that way you can better understand and understand where she is coming from, what she endured, and how she became the woman that she is now, how she became the mother that she is to you. And so I think we become extremely offended because we look at our mothers as being that first protector, and as being, that nurturer, and so we often put her in the category of being, again, infallible, of being, this superhero. And so you when she does make a mistake, it's like disbelief. Like, hey, you're not supposed to do that because you're a mom. Oh no, you're not supposed to get upset like that because you're a mom. Oh, you're not supposed to talk to me like that because you're a mom. And no, that is not a healthy relationship. However, knowing our history, of constant oppression, and just understanding the dynamics within our household, it will help us, excuse me, to better understand, where our mother, and this is applicable also to fathers, as well, whether it be daughter and whether it be son. um we can apply this, and we can, seek to understand our parents a lot better if we just take the time to know their story. And this is not to excuse or justify violence, or to justify abuse. It is none of that. Okay, but we can mitigate, and we can develop healthy ways to interact with our parents so that the relationship can heal, and so that it can grow, and so that this pathology also is not repeated in our parenting. And so what I looked at my mother's life as being just the ultimate classroom. It really was. I learned from her in so many ways, and I always watched her even when she didn't think that I was looking. But I admire her because she is just so strong and she's endured so much. And I do often wonder, wow, how this woman is still standing. And so I always seek to have my mother understand that I, or to seek to have my mother know that I am very much so aware of her story, and I understand, and uh, I don't blame her. I don't, I don't want to hurt her, and that I really do understand how she became the woman and mother that she is. And it's very important. It was very important for me to relay that to my mother, and just to let her know that I understand. And I don't, I don't judge you for it, but I do hope that healing can come, so healing can come, so that some of those dysfunctional behaviors, and or all of them, can be, eradicated. And so, yeah, that is what I would encourage you to do, especially my sisters. I know there's so many of us that have broken relationships with our mothers, and it is really interfering with who the women that we are today, and the mothers that we are today. So it would behoove you to really sit down and ask your mother about her story. And if she doesn't really want to get into it or tell you, there are family members that you can ask. And so I think it's very important, and it's a starter on how to really heal our relationships with our mothers. So, yes, go and talk to them and talk to others in the family and ask them, how did mom grow up? What were the family dynamics? How was she with her mom? What she endured and what she experienced? And that way, when you're speaking to her and she starts to display the dysfunctional behavior, that you can arm yourself with healthy ways of of, of, of responding to that dysfunctional behavior. Very, very, very important. So that is my message today. Know that your mother is a woman just like you. And as you know now that you're no longer a teenager or a child, that you are not infallible, that you make mistakes too, and that you're not a perfect mother either, and that maybe some of the ways, some of the dysfunction that you are exhibiting maybe is tied and not maybe most likely tied and related to the relationship that you had with your mother, and then her mother with her mother. Like I said, it just because you to break it, you need to arm yourself with the knowledge of your mother and her past and her upbringing, so that you can move forward to healing. All right, so your mother is a woman just like you. Seek to understand her, seek to understand her, seek to overstand, her as a whole, and not just as your mother, but as a woman just like you. All right, until next time, you all.